Hey, Josh sings. Darren, yes, there are candidates with the other, there are debates with the other candidates coming up pretty soon. I believe, just give me a second. Right, so debates coming up. Let's see. What's this one for? So one of this, no, that's something else. That's training. There's one this Thursday at the Winston Churchill. So that will be a private one just for the students. And then there's one. That's just this. That's the only one this week. Then there's one from the Coaldale Chamber of Commerce next Monday. There is one at the university Tuesday on the 14th, and then there's one the following Thursday, Lethbridge Chamber. And there's one at Chinook High School on Thursday the 16th as well. Those that one was also going to be a high school one, so that will be a private one. The university is attempting to do a stream, so hopefully that one will be available. The Lethbridge Chamber is not going to have an online one. I haven't heard back from the Coaldale one if they're going to be having one. So as far as I know, at this point, only the University of Lethbridge forum is going to have an online version. So, sorry, that's all. That's all I have for you. Great. So how many people do we have here? Oh, 5 people watching. Cool. And a thumbs up. Nice. All right. So hopefully we have a few more people show up. I had a little bit of technical difficulties, I guess, when I set it up. I had set it up to stream with other software rather than using the built-in software with YouTube. And so I had to fix that and come up with a different link. So hopefully everybody ends up getting here through the new link. But we'll just wait for a little bit and see who else shows up. I think at one point we had almost 30 last week. So it'd be nice if we get a similar number this week. Now we're down to 4. Well, if we only have 4, maybe it'll be quicker than last week. We'll wait for a few more minutes, see if anybody shows up. Otherwise, we could just get into the questions for those who are here. Feel free to, why do you think the Conservative Party is going up in the polls? Is it their campaign promises that are slightly more liberal ideology based? So I will get to that question after we wait for a few minutes to see if other people are showing up. If nobody else shows up, then I can go ahead and talk about that one. I mean, I'm kind of going to be focused on my campaign platform and not the federal election in general, but I'm happy to give you my thoughts on it. I haven't really analyzed it, so I'm not sure how much I'm going to be able to provide, but I can give you my thoughts regardless. Oh, now we're down to 3. All right, so I'll just give it another minute and then we'll just get into it because I think people are getting bored when they show up and see that I'm not doing anything. But yeah, we'll give it. So I've been streaming for 6 minutes. I'll give it to 7 minutes and then we'll just go into that question. If you do win, will you have equal opportunity to speak up in the House of Commons? All right, so that's 2 questions to ask. All right, so let's get started then. Going into these couple questions that I have already. If you can hear my dog, I apologize for that. He's trying to protect our house. Someone must have walked by. So first question, why do you think the Conservative Party is going up in the polls? Is it their campaign promises that are slightly more liberal ideology based? That's a good question. So if you notice the poll numbers, what you will see is that as the Conservative Party numbers go up, the Liberal numbers go down, which tells me that some of the Liberal voters are switching over to the Conservative Party. And so my guess is that there is a sizable portion of voters who switch between the Liberal and Conservative parties. So I anticipate that those voters are not are politically aligned in between the Liberal platform and the Conservative platform, and will go between those two parties. An interesting thing, though, is that the Conservative Party seems to be polling down the last few polls. The last 6 polls or so, they've been polling down. And the Liberals are up just a tiny bit, so I'm not sure that that's going to result in the Liberals going up somewhat. But yeah, I would venture to say that most of it is just those voters who are in between the Liberal platform and the Conservative platform, and then waffle between the two parties all the time. I think those ones, I think they're just being finicky, and for whatever reason, they're not liking the Liberals and are going over to the Conservatives. This isn't reflective of the voting population in general, because I mean, the Conservatives, even though they went up in the polls, they're still below 40%. So, more than 60% of poll respondents are picking a party other than the Conservatives. So it's not reflective of the voting intentions of the voting population in general. So that's something to keep in mind when you look at those polls. So that, yeah, that's my thoughts on that. I like I said, I haven't been keeping track of that very much, and so I was just looking at the numbers there, and that's what I think. The second question: if you do win, will you have equal opportunity to speak up in the House of Commons? Not necessarily. A preference is generally given to the governing party, as well as opposition parties, and then preference is given to members of parliament who belong to recognized parties. So even though independent MPs can speak in the House of Commons, they won't have as many opportunities to speak. Now, keep in mind, though, that speaking in question period is only a small part of what members of parliament do. So members of parliament can speak to other members of parliament to collaborate on bills and motions. They can talk to ministers, to discuss issues that they're having in their riding. There's all sorts of things they can do outside of a question period. So even though they won't be able to speak as much in question period, there are still opportunities for them to do work on behalf of their riding. Ro Teddy says, oops, sorry, I'm late. No problem. We had some technical difficulties anyhow, so we got started late. So hopefully, Darren, those have answered your questions. Feel free to ask others if you have them. And anybody else who happens to be watching. Oh, good, we're up to 6 now. Awesome. We have our viewership has doubled, so that's one way to put it. Yeah, so this is basically just open-ended. Ask questions that you might have. I'd like to focus my responses on my campaign and how I will represent my riding. You can ask about politics in general, but that's would be my preference. Can you quickly recap, please? Well, there isn't much to say. I had 2 questions, or 3 questions technically. Someone asked me if there were going to be any debates with candidates coming up, and if any of them will be streamed. We have several debates coming up, but to my knowledge, only one of them is going to be streamed to the public, and that's going to be this University of Lethbridge Student Union. Another question was, why do you think the Conservative Party is going up in the polls? And I just said that it's just some of the Liberal voters who typically switch between the 2 parties are switching over to the Conservatives. But the polls are showing the Conservatives are dipping slightly. So we'll see what the next 2 weeks shows up. And then we have equal opportunity to speak in the House of Commons. And all I said was that technically I won't have the same opportunity, but there's speaking in question period in the House of Commons isn't the only thing that I can do as an MP. What are some industries we could invest in Southern Alberta specifically to diversify the economy? I don't think that we necessarily need to invest in specific industries in order to diversify the economy. Southern Alberta, specifically Lethbridge, already has a very diverse economy. That's why when there are economic downturns in the Alberta economy, driven by volatility in the oil and gas sector, Lethbridge's economy comes away relatively unscathed, is because we already have a really diverse economy here. Now, outside of Lethbridge, it's heavily focused on agriculture, right? So anything that happens in the agriculture industry is going to affect the surrounding communities, and to an extent, Lethbridge, because some of our industries support the agriculture, or agriculture supports those industries, like food processing, for example. But yeah, I don't know that the federal government needs to get involved in investing in specific industries in order to diversify the economy. The economy is already diverse. Now, that being said, one way, I think the best way to diversify the economy is to make sure that the consumers, or in other words, the workers, since the workers make up 80 to 90% of the consumers in the economy, as of the readings that I've seen recently, is to make sure those consumers or workers have enough money to pay for the things that they need, and even a little bit more discretionary income. Because the more money that consumers get, the more money they spend, and that money gets spent in the economy, whether it's buying groceries or gas or clothes or going out to eat at restaurants or sports games or theater performances or whatever it happens to be. They spend money, and that money circulates in the economy, driving up demand, which in turn creates jobs. And so because everybody has a diverse set of interests and preferences and likes, then by nature, if everybody has enough money to support their needs and then maybe buy a little bit more, the economy will diversify naturally in order to meet that diverse set of needs and wants and preferences. And then the other thing is, one thing the federal government can do is to be able to invest in infrastructure, things like hospitals and schools and water sanitation and whatever else it happens to be. And as they invest in those things, that money goes to the companies who build those things, and which then they use that money to spend in the local economy as well. Once again, diversifying the economy, driving up demand in various sectors. So we need to make sure that workers have enough money to to be able to live comfortably. And then the federal government can also spend money paying for new infrastructure. So not only does it help the economy, but it improves the quality of life for everybody when we invest in that infrastructure. There are more women's companies across Alberta. That's interesting to know. What are the ways we can give workers more disposable income besides taxing the rich? What else could we do? Well, the biggest thing that the federal government can do is to implement a universal basic income or a guaranteed livable wage. That's probably the easiest thing to do. Beyond that, all you can really do is either increase the federal minimum wage, which then only affects a small segment of the working population, federal public sector workers, and workers that are regulated by the federal government. The federal government could also, meet with provincial and territorial governments to, convince them to raise their minimum wages. But beyond that, there isn't a whole lot else they can do. So I think the UBI or the guaranteed livable wage could have the biggest impact in that regard. So it wouldn't be increasing their wages directly, but functionally, consumers would have more money in the end to be able to spend every month to be able to take care of their needs. These are great questions. Thank you. Any other questions? So it says we have 6 people watching. Any of those other 6 people other than Darren have a question? Darren has lots of questions, which I don't mind answering, but it'd be interesting to see what other people are thinking as well. I'm loving the great questions. Yeah, me too. This is one of the nice things about having these weekly streams, as well as having my fireside chats, is everybody has so many great questions, and it preps me for the debates. What would be the number one thing you would like to work on when you get to Ottawa? Well, the number one thing I would work on is representing Lethbridge. So that's something I think Lethbridge has been lacking for a very long time. It has nothing to do with our current MP. This is something Lethbridge is lacking for a very long time. And it's only because of the nature of the party system, and that most of the major parties require that MPs vote collectively on particular issues. And that means that the MPs have to vote on the issue regardless of whether that's something that is good for their constituency. And so that's something that would be the number one thing that I would bring to Ottawa, is being a better representative for Lethbridge, because I wouldn't be bound by party politics. If I can vote freely in every meaning of the word on matters of importance that come up in the House of Commons. I can look at that and say, yeah, that's going to benefit Lethbridge, and vote in favor of it. Or I can look at it and say, no, that's not going to be, that would be bad for Lethbridge if we vote in favor of that. So I can vote against it, regardless of what any of the other parties do. I can just vote for what's best for Lethbridge. So that would be the number one thing. And keep in mind that as an independent MP, I can't propose a whole lot, particularly anything that requires increasing taxation. I'm not allowed to. Only the governing party is allowed to put forward bills that require the increasing of taxation. So implementing programs that would require an increase to revenue would be difficult for me to be able to do. Plus, I'm only one person, and so I would have to convince a lot of people in order to get on board with me. So I wouldn't be able to work on specific projects or programs. Would you feel comfortable voting to bring an aborting clinic to Lethbridge? Well, not necessarily a clinic specifically designed for abortion, but I do think that Lethbridge needs to have better access to all medical services, including abortion. So right now, people who need an abortion have to, for the most part, have to travel up to Calgary, which to and from Calgary, and that can be annoying. I have a child who is going through um, um, gender reaffirming treatment. And as a result, when we had to go to our initial consultations, they were all up in Calgary, and we'd have to travel, 2.5 hours one way each time for a 15 or 20-minute consult, and then drive another 2 to 2.5 hours back. And it's annoying to have to do that. The pandemic showed that it can be done on over the phone or online or whatever else. It doesn't have to be in person for things. But then there are other things too, like we had to go get one of our children had to actually it was the same child had to go for eye surgery years and years ago, about 10 or 11 years ago. It all had to be done in Calgary. I had to go up to Calgary for the consult. I had to go up to Calgary for the surgery. Always had to go up to Calgary. And it's annoying. So same with abortion clinics or abortion services, I should say. So it would be great if we can have more services, make it more accessible for those who need it. Do you feel we have foreign influence on social media that targets Canadians to divide the country and provide COVID misinformation? If so, how do we combat? Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's possible. I'm not sure. And how do you combat this? Yeah, I'm not sure. That's something that would be on the hands of the social media companies. So as you can pass legislation that would limit them to make sure that whatever's posted online is, not misinformation. Yeah, I'm not sure. That's beyond that's beyond my scope as an MP for Lethbridge riding. It's not really something I could do. And yeah, so other questions? Great. Well, let's wait for a little bit, see if other people have any questions. Do you think that seniors should have a living wage and full medical coverage after they become seniors? Yeah, I think everybody should have a living wage. That's why I support universal basic income. I mean, the U in universal basic income is universal. So everybody gets it, no matter what their life circumstances are. So yeah, I think seniors should have that as well. Full medical coverage after they become seniors. Well, yeah, I think everybody should have full medical coverage, no matter where you are in your life. So you should be able to go to the doctors for basic medical care. You should be able to go to the hospital for emergency medical care. You should be able to, go to the dentist to get your teeth cleaned, go to the optometrist to get your eyes checked, to get a new prescription, go to the pharmacy to get some medication. Whatever happens to be, you should be able to do all those things and not have to worry about having to pay out of pocket for it. So yeah, I think that should be the case whether you're a senior or anybody else. It's a good question. How do we educate Canadians more to trust professionals in specific fields like virologists, scientists, and doctors? It seems we have about 25% of people in Canada distrusting professionals. Yeah, I don't know that that's the responsibility of the federal government. So you can try to make sure that you include it in the curriculum, but again, that's a provincial mandate. So I'm not sure how the federal government can do that. And people are people. That's one of the the side effects of having democratized internet. People can publish whatever they want, and people are free to find it and believe it if they want to as well. So that's one of the side effects of being able to make everything so freely accessible, is that it's freely accessible. People can publish what they want. People can read it and believe it if they want to. Do you support drug decriminalization at a federal level? Does your vision on access to pharmacare include safe supply for people who experience addiction? Yes, I believe all currently illicit drugs should be decriminalized, and that must come with a safe supply, whatever that looks like. And sure, I'm fine with pharmacare covering that as well. Obviously, the current system we have right now isn't working and led to the drug crisis. So, if we decriminalize all drugs, then that frees up our justice system. So we have fewer people being apprehended, fewer people being incarcerated, and that saves us a lot of money that we could then use to be able to put into programs that prevent drug addiction in the first place, that can prevent poverty, which can then lead to crime. So there's all sorts of things we can then use that money for. And another thing to keep in mind too is that one of the problems with the way that things currently are set up is that because there's no regulation on how drugs are produced, people are obviously going to consume drugs no matter what we do. That's been the case for decades. We've had this war on drugs happening since the middle of the last century, and we still have drugs happening. And because it's illegal, it's not regulated. And because it's not regulated, people can put whatever they want in the drugs that they sell. And then that is further amplified by the fact that our border has been closed. And so it's been difficult to get supplies across the border from the United States, which means that the drugs that are being sold on the street are more volatile and unreliable, and they're leading to more deaths, which is what we're seeing over the last year and a half, is a lot more drug deaths in this province. And people like to blame the UCP, and they can only take some of the blame. Like there are other contributing factors as well, right? You can't blame the Alberta government because, well, not entirely, because there are opioid deaths in all the provinces. This isn't a problem specific to just Alberta. So yeah, I think that if we could decriminalize drugs, then it would allow us to regulate drugs, which then could provide, like you said, a safe supply. So that's a great question, Killian. Thank you. Are people free in a country if misinformation divides and compromises societal safety for the majority of Canadians? It seems like a federal issue because it's national security at stake. Yeah, I mean, people are still free to believe what they want, to read what they want, to publish what they want, to, like I said, believe what you want. So people are still free to do those things, even if there is misinformation that divides us. Yeah, honestly, I don't know what else the federal government can do other than to, publish publish accurate information provided by professionals. Like, you can't go into people's houses and tell them, you're no longer allowed to use the internet, or here's a white list of sites that you can only visit, that you can't visit any other websites except for these ones. Like we can't shut down what websites are allowed to come up on the internet as well. I don't think that's something that we need to be going down, the government deciding which websites can and cannot be viewed by the citizens of a country. I think that's a dangerous precedent for us to set. So beyond that, I don't know what else the federal government can do in order to, change what people's view, what people publish, that sort of thing. So what would you be willing to help change the laws to make them stricter for police brutality? Well, I'd like to see us get away from a punitive model of policing and focus on preventing crime rather than responding to it. Our current model of policing responds to crime after it's already occurred, and we should be focusing on preventing crime in the first place. We should be focusing on addressing the causes of crime, such as poverty and homelessness, drug addiction, things like that. And if we do that instead, then we'll have less crime and less need for policing. And if there's less need for policing, we'd have less police brutality as well. I don't know that stricter punishments for cops who are violent is going to get rid of police brutality. So I think we just need to reformat how we do policing overall. These are great questions. They really make me think. So I appreciate all the questions that people are bringing forward. Police brutality right now seems biased, and I'm hoping to help change who they attack. But I don't want to change who they attack. I want to change the number of attacks. Like, yeah, it's sad that they're targeting specific demographic groups, but they shouldn't be targeting anybody at all. So I think if we again review how we're dealing with policing in general, that would mitigate the problem of police brutality overall. Other questions? Great. Well, we'll wait a couple more minutes, see if other questions come up. Oh, now we have 7. I don't think we've had 7 yet today, so reached our highest number. So whoever joined, thank you for joining. If you have a question, you could just get right into it. Been addressing several other questions. Can people see the entire chat when they come in? I've never checked before. So I'm just wondering if people can see the questions that have already been asked. Where are the local? Oh, that's good to know. Where are the local debates? So there will be a debate, Lethbridge Chamber of Commerce. Actually, I don't even know where it's located. Yeah, I'm not sure where the location is. The Coaldale Chamber of Commerce is going to be at the Coaldale Community Center. There's going to be one at the university, and that's in one of the student union ballrooms. And so far, and then there are 2 at a couple of the high schools, but those are for high school students only, so those won't be accessible to the public. Is Canada able to decouple itself from USA imperialism? Or are we bound to help them in this due to allied agreements for war? Yeah, I mean, I think they're able to, but I'm not sure that that's going to happen for a very long time, especially if we keep voting in parties that support neoliberal concepts such as military occupation and imperialism. So I think we're able to, but I'm not sure that's going to happen anytime soon. I think we'd have to change the parties that are the governing parties in Canada for that to be able to change. And I think there's a lot of pressure from Western nations to participate in military efforts. So I would support getting involved in fewer military exercises. So if motions like that came forward, I would most definitely vote against them, or I would definitely vote in favor of fewer military interventions on Canada's part. Oh, got another thumbs up. So that's 2 thumbs up. That's awesome. Still 7 people here, so great. Other questions people have? Are we not usually just peacekeepers? Well, I, I think the whole concept of peacekeeping, um, being involved with or requiring military intervention, is a bit of a contradiction. Um, like, for example, take Afghanistan, for example. What exactly were we trying to do to keep the peace? Like, I'm not exactly sure what our purpose was even going into Afghanistan, other than to help the United States find Osama bin Laden, which they did in just a few years. It certainly didn't take 20 years to find Osama bin Laden. So I'm not sure that we were there to keep the peace. So that's I, yeah. I'm not convinced that Canada is there as just peacekeepers. What kind of measures would you support regarding COVID preventing spread, vaccine passports, recovery in the economy after, etc.? Well, it seems to me that jurisdictions that implement a vaccine passport seem to have a higher uptake in vaccinations. And so I definitely would support vaccine passports. It would allow us to better open up the economy, and not just the economy, but just services in general, government services, um, health services, but business services as well, going out to eat or whatever happens to be. And traveling as well. We can travel between provinces and maybe even into other countries. So I think I would support vaccine passports. It seems some of the provinces in Canada are focusing on trying to get more people vaccinated as their solution to the pandemic, but then aren't doing much other than just asking everybody nicely to get vaccinated. But vaccine passports seem to work. The data seems to support that when they implement vaccine passports, vaccination rates jump. So I would definitely support that. And the recovering the economy after, yeah, like I was sort of talking about before, the key to helping the economy to recover is to making sure that the consumers, who are primarily workers, almost entirely workers, 80 to 90% of consumers are workers, is making sure that they have enough money. And if workers have enough money, then they'll spend it. And then that money, that spending will drive demand, which then increases jobs and that sort of thing. So yeah, I think that's the key, is making sure consumers/workers have enough money to be able to take care of their needs, and maybe a little bit extra too, not just their basic needs, not just be able to pay for food and water and shelter and clothes, but like be able to go out to eat or whatever else. Because as the more they spend, the better the economy is off. So as far as economic recovery, I think that's the best way to do it, is to make sure that consumers have the money they need. So I just can't see us being very strong, good at war. Yeah, I not. I regardless of whether Canada is good or not at war, I'm just not sure we need to be involved as much as we have been in military interventions. Is there a way we could balance it out with offering some places to be mixed vaccine, no vaccine, others to show vaccine? I'm not sure what that question is asking. Offering some place to be mixed vaccine? Yeah, I don't know. Like a smoking section in a restaurant. Um, yeah, you can't balance that. Yeah, if that's what it is, like a smoking section in a restaurant. Yeah, as someone who has been in a restaurant with smoking sections can attest to, that smoke doesn't care whether you're sorry. There's a emergency vehicle going by. I live downtown, so just like the cigarette smoke didn't care where you were sitting in the restaurant, and the virus doesn't care either. So yeah, I think that's important that we, if a institution is going to implement vaccine requirements, then they need to make sure it's across the board and not just say you can't come in or you can come in. It has to be across the board. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So, other questions? Do you think the federal government should step in regarding COVID if a provincial government is mucking things up? Um, yeah, that's tricky. I think it would have to be extenuating circumstances. Um, yeah, like I, I think a federal government would should step in if a provincial government is purposefully doing things knowing that those actions are going to hurt people or purposely trying to hurt people. If they're doing, if they are, if their lack of action is leading to people becoming sick or getting hurt, I'm not sure that that is as much of a cause for the federal government to step in. It's just that this is the problem with, or I shouldn't say the problem. This is one of the side effects of having a federalism, a government built on federalism, is that you have to you have to adhere to the rights set up in the, or the to the responsibility set up in the Constitution, and so you have to make sure that the lower jurisdictions, such as provinces and territories, have the ability to manage the the stewardships that they are in charge of, such as health and education and um, natural resources and things like that. It's just it's because if you go see, this is the thing, is that if a government goes in now because that government thinks that the provincial government isn't doing what they that the federal government thinks that they should be doing, then what's stopping a federal government later on coming into a provincial government and stopping them from doing something they don't like to do? So right now, right now somebody might be living in a province that has a government that isn't doing what they want them to do, right? And they want the federal government to come in and change that. But what if you're living in a province where the government is doing what you want them to do, but the federal government doesn't want them to be doing that, and then the federal government comes in and changes that? You see what I'm saying? I think it's very tricky for you to be setting precedent of what a federal government can and can't do regarding provincial jurisdiction. So I'm not sure that a federal government could come in and say, okay, I see that you're having difficulty keeping things under control. Here's some extra resources to make help. We're willing to come in and set up, emergency hospitals or medical services or whatever it happens to be. We're willing to fund these specific initiatives directly, that sort of thing. But you just have to be careful not overstepping your bounds, because when you do it now for something that you want to happen, it could end up happening later for something you don't want to happen. Uh, you'll be lacking a lot of the benefits, resources that come with party support. Have you thought about how you make up for that? Communication in particular has been lacking over the years. Yeah, I don't know that I'll be lacking that much. I mean, the thing that I'm going to lack the most is, the amount of speaking I can do in the House of Commons. I spoke to this earlier. I'm not sure if you just joined or whatever. Is speaking during question period in the House of Commons, but that's just a small part of what a member of Parliament does in Ottawa. Like, I can meet with other MPs to discuss issues, to collaborate, brainstorm on motions that they might want to present. I can meet with ministers and talk to them about, some of the issues that Lethbridge is facing specifically and what they might be able to offer to try and to address some of those concerns that Lethbridge is dealing with. But beyond that, like, there's only so much. My ability to affect change in the House of Commons is more or less on par with any one other MP, their ability to affect change in the House of Commons. So right now, Rachel Harder, for example, can only do so much as a single MP for the Lethbridge riding, right? She has a bigger party, so the party overall can do stuff, but as a single MP, she doesn't have a lot of power. And same with me. She has the ability to speak more often than I would be able to do as an independent. But as an individual MP, she doesn't have a whole lot of power. Her power comes from the party, but it's not really her power. It's the power of a party. But even so, like I can, if there's an issue that comes forward that I think could benefit Lethbridge, I can vote in favor of that party, in favor of that issue, right? So if a UBI, for example, comes forward and I think a UBI would be great for Lethbridge, well, I can vote in favor of it. So I would add my voice to the other voices who are voting in favor of it. Or universal dental care. I think universal dental care would benefit the residents of Lethbridge. And if that comes forward and other MPs vote in favor of it, I can add my voice to that vote as well. So I would have the same power as any other individual MP in the House of Commons. So I don't think that my power is that limited. I think there are a lot I can do in order to represent Lethbridge, just Lethbridge specific a bit as well, to be able to influence policy for the greater good for the province or the country as a whole. She still voted against banning conversion therapy and tried to bring back banning abortions. Okay, I'm not going to talk to Rachel Harder's past voting intentions. That's not the way I play politics. So I'm willing to talk about how I feel about specific issues, but how other people feel, that's not to me to comment on. I'll tell you what my position is, and then if that resonates with you, then you can vote for me. I don't want people to vote for me because I'm different from Rachel Harder. I want people to vote for me because of my stances on particular issues. If we wanted UBI, do you think Canadians would pay into it like a CPP? No, I don't. I don't think Canadians across the board should pay into it. I think it should come out of increasing taxation, specifically on people who are wealthy and perhaps corporations as well. Other parties have brought forward, implementing a wealth tax as a way to fund UBI, and I'm fine with that. I'm fine with just increasing the top marginal tax rate on personal income tax as a way to fund UBI as well. So I'm fine with bringing our corporate tax rates to where they were 30 years ago as a way to pay for the UBI. So I'm fine with increasing taxes on people who have had their taxes reduced or who don't pay enough in taxes as a way to be able to pay for it. So I don't think people should have to pay into it. Otherwise, some people pay too much into programs already. They're not making enough money, and so it's just be penalizing them. I just think people who put the most demand on public services, like people who are rich, people who own large corporations, those people are the ones who should pay for things like that. Is there evidence that if you implement wealth tax, large corporations would leave? How do we combat this? Maybe smaller businesses growth. Would this be a good thing for Canada? That's certainly, people suggest that corporations will leave I don't know about it. Usually when they make that argument, it's specific to increasing the corporate income tax, not specifically wealth tax, because wealth tax is taxed onto individuals, not on corporations, generally speaking, the ones that I'm aware of. Increasing corporate income tax, I don't think will lead to corporations leaving. Like if that were the case, then since Alberta has the lowest corporate tax rate, we should see lots of corporations moving their headquarters in Toronto and Montreal and Vancouver to Calgary, and we don't see that. So there's more to where people are located other than how much their corporate income tax is. Regarding the wealth tax, and specifically, I don't think that is going to lead to large corporations leaving, because there's more to leaving than whether you are taxed on your wealth. Like if we put on a 1% wealth tax, right, then you get to keep 99% of your wealth, and that wealth is increasing every year based on interest that it accumulates. So I don't think it's going to be that hard for the ultra wealthy to be able to pay a wealth tax, and so as a result, they're not going to lose a large portion of their wealth. Like if we tax them at 99%. Then yeah, maybe they would leave. But 1% wealth tax, I don't think they're going to leave based on a 1% wealth tax. I really don't. Like if someone's making $10 million, they're still going to be left with $9 million, $990,000. So I don't think they're going to be leaving because of a 1% wealth tax. Maybe smaller business growth. I'm not sure. Oh, focus on growing small businesses. Yeah, if we implement a UBI, it would definitely improve the small business growth because people would be spending their money in small businesses. So, yeah, it would definitely improve the small businesses. Number of small businesses we have. How do you feel about the mining on treaty land that was brought up earlier this year? Well, first of all land is treaty land, so I'm not sure what you're asking exactly. So all land is treaty land in Canada, and all mining is done on treaty land in Canada. How do we combat monopoly growth of agriculture? Bayer and John Deere seem to be pushing out the smaller farmer, and these companies are acquiring large amounts of property. How do we protect the farmer? I, I'm not sure. It's the same with all businesses. Like it's not just something that's specific to agriculture. Businesses get bought up all the time in all sectors. I mean, you see it consolidation of businesses in oil and gas sector, in the financial sector, even like TD and Canada Trust merged several years ago. Um, excuse me, several of the other banks tried merging a few years ago, and that was canceled. But I mean, merging of companies happens all the time, whether it's in agriculture or other sectors. So I'm not sure how you would combat it. That's the nature of the beast. Like part of the problem, there's a lot of pressure um, to consolidate and to build these large agriculture um, corporations because as we grow our population, especially in Western societies that have high consumption levels, as we grow our population, then we put added demand on the resources. So we eat more food, we buy more textiles, which like linens, for example, come from flax, or cotton is an agriculture product, and wool comes from sheep, that sort of thing. So as we increase our demand for these materials, then it puts added pressure on farms to produce more. But the problem is that the amount of land that we have available for producing agriculture keeps shrinking as our cities keep growing outward, and as we put land aside for parks, and as we build bigger and bigger roadways and railroad tracks and mining and oil and gas extraction and more windmills and solar panels and everything else. Every time we build something more, we're using up more land, and every time more land is used up, there's less land available for to be able to grow things that we need, that we consume. And the more we have this ever decreasing supply of land at the same time that we have this ever increasing demand for the things the land produces. And so we as a society are forcing farmers to consolidate and to be able to produce things at a more using more intensive methods. And it isn't just that we just have more people, but more people are consuming more things. And Western societies and in general are really horrible at this, are really good at it, depending on how you define it. We consume more than we need. We billions of tons of food every year around the world are thrown in the garbage because they aren't consumed. You look at any fast food restaurant. I used to work at McDonald's. It was the first real paying job that I had. And so much food got thrown out. I mean, this was 30 years ago, but so much food was thrown out because, we put ketchup on a hamburger that someone asked for no ketchup, right? And we just threw it all out. And McDonald's isn't alone in this. So many restaurants are like this. And it's not just restaurants either. So much gets thrown out. And so we consume a lot that just ends up getting thrown in the garbage. And as a result, we put this extra demand on farmers to produce. And so, yeah, like I said, we have this ever decreasing land supply and an ever increasing demand for the things that's produced on that land. So we're almost forcing farmers to do stuff like this. I understand that many corporations are responsible for most greenhouse, but do you think we as humans should lower consumerism and live within our means? Yeah, I think every person has a responsibility to reduce how much they consume. But at the same time, like corporations are producing things and then convincing us to buy them, right? We're not Corporations aren't wrapping things in a lots of plastic because we as consumers are demanding it. You know, we're not demanding particular types of packaging. We're not demanding particular types of dyes or inks to use in the packaging. You know, we're not demanding these sorts of things. We're not demanding cereal that's in a bag, then in a box, for example. You know, we're not demanding that our milk cartons are made with particular types of plastics. We can only take so much responsibility as consumers for the way that greenhouse emissions are produced in this world. We build cities, and municipal governments and land developers are both complicit in this. But we build cities that put preference onto vehicles, and not just vehicles, but single occupancy vehicles. Over 80%, as of the 2016 federal census, over 80% of Lethbridge commuters drive in a vehicle with with just themselves in it to and from work every day. And we have built a city, and that's not specific to Lethbridge. That's a problem across Canada. We have built our cities in a way that favors, you know, that sort of activity. And as we have activity like that, then it produces the greenhouse gas emissions that come with everybody driving their own vehicle and not carpooling or taking transit or walking or cycling or whatever. And so not only do we build these cities that are far apart that people have to drive to, but we also build cities where like people don't live near where they work. They have to drive across the city to get to where they work. And so our society as in general is complicit in creating these. So yeah, consumers should change their behavior, but they're not the ones solely responsible for the condition our society is. Corporations bear responsibility, various levels of government bear responsibility for the policies that they've implemented and that sort of thing. But that doesn't let consumers off the hook either. We should be responsible for our own consumption habits. That being said, like some consumption habits are based on your ability to buy things, right? So for example, buying organic produce, that's more expensive than conventional produce. And if you are poor, you can't afford to do that. Same thing with junk food, right? If you're poor and you're going to buy food that's high in, palm oil as a way to produce that food, it's processed food that's high in palm oil, well, then that's contributing to the destruction of rainforest and orangutan habitat in Indonesia, right? But that's what you can afford. Like if you're poor, you're poor. You can't change that. And so there's only so much you can do. And so our ability to change habits is affected by a lot of the things. And so corporations and governments have responsibility as well. And governments have responsibility not just about local policy, but as well as working with other countries, because emissions isn't something that's restricted to Canada or Alberta or Lethbridge for that matter, right? Emissions move around. And so emissions that affect Canada might be coming from other countries around the world and vice versa. And so it's important that we work with other countries to try and combat climate change too. For transportation, would getting bus routes back across Western Canada and railroad cars be something to invest in to cut back on our carbon footprint? Yeah, I think we need public transportation systems. I think it's irresponsible for us to, as a government, demand that people change their habits when we don't put infrastructure in place to allow them to do that. You put in a carbon tax and expect that people are going to stop driving their vehicles because then they don't have to spend so much on gas. But you can't take a bus from Nobleford down to Lethbridge or from Colehurst to Coaldale because there are no buses, right? So you have to make sure that the infrastructure is in place if you want people to change their behavior. And so, yeah, totally. I think we should invest in public transportation infrastructure, whether that's countrywide bus service, whether it's improving rail service to where it used to be. We used to have a rail service linking Winnipeg to Vancouver through Calgary and Regina, but various governments shut that down. And then they moved technically they moved the line from Calgary. They shut down the Edmonton line, then moved the Calgary line up to Edmonton. But still, it's another thing altogether. And this infatuation with low taxes and balanced budgets has given us the society that we have today. We cannot keep having low taxes and keep having balanced budgets. It's just impossible. Things end up getting cut, and then we have a worse society as a result of it. So yeah, I totally support national infrastructure, bus services, rail, even planes, even in the airline service. We used to have a public airline service that the country sold off, just like it did with the trains and bus service. And if we do have those national transportation infrastructures, I think they should be run by a federal entity, not by the private sector. You can now ask for bags that can be compostable. That's cool. Yeah, I mean, we compost. I don't usually use bags for my groceries. I have plastic bins that I've been using for the last 15 years or so. But yeah, and when I do get bags, I usually end up using them for kitty litter or picking up after my dog when I take my walks and stuff. I love the idea of using public transportation, but would it also be a disadvantage when pandemics hit? Sure. Yeah, it could be. So we have to make sure that we mitigate any effects of pandemic in public transportation. Require people to wear masks on public transportation or use vaccine passports or something else. So yeah, we just have to find a way to be able to deal with it. COVID-19 has made it so carpooling isn't an option. Well, yeah, but I mean, we haven't always had COVID-19, and yet, like I said, the census data I was citing was from 2016. That's 5 years ago, and we didn't have COVID-19 then. So carpooling has been an issue for a long time, not just in 2020 and 2021. And eventually, COVID-19 won't be an issue anymore because a large portion of the population will get vaccinated, including globally, because right now in lower income countries, vaccination rates are under 5%. And so we need to work on those as well collectively. So ride Edmonton on the railroad. I've ridden the bus all over Alberta. Cool. Yeah, I've only ridden the bus to Calgary. I've ridden through Alberta when I used to live in BC. When I lived in Saskatchewan, I rode the bus to visit my grandparents. So I've ridden the bus plenty of times. If I order online, the one lingerie store I deal has compostable bags that can be reused for mailing and then put into the dirt. Cool. Yeah. We put our pizza boxes in our compost because apparently you can't recycle pizza boxes because the grease and stuff in them. So we just compost ours. It's just cardboard, so eventually it breaks down. I mean, you weren't talking about pizza boxes, but I was just giving an example of waste that we compost. And we've been composting for a long time, ever since we bought our house. But I recognize not everybody owns a house and can compost, but that's a privilege I have. So we've already been over an hour, but if people have other questions, I'm willing to entertain them. I'm just mindful of the time in case people need to be somewhere. And my water's getting low too. So. Solidarity, Darren. Any other questions? Thanks, Darren. Solidarity, my shirt is on its way. Awesome. Thanks for your purchase. Yeah, I'm wearing this shirt to all the events or any videos I do and stuff. So it's kind of like my campaign outfit. We've lost a couple of viewers. A bit of a fluff question. Where do you stand on leaving staying in the Commonwealth? I'm fine either way. Like, um, I don't know that having a head of state, or sorry, yeah, head of state like the Queen is worthwhile. Like, I don't think it provides anything worthwhile to Canada as a country. But I mean, it's just replacing one form of colonialism with another. So the Canadian state is a colonial project, and whether it's has direct ties to the the crown or not, it's still going to be a colonial project. So, like, I'm fine either way. I'm not sure that much is would change here functionally. We wouldn't have to have, a Queen's representative sign off on an election call, for example, stuff like that. But yeah, like, it's not that big of a deal to me whether we're still tied to the crown or not, because ultimately it doesn't make that much of a difference on how colonialism is practiced in Canada. What is your opinion on Quebec becoming a nation? I have no problem with people choosing to be their own nation. So whether it's Alberta or Canada or whoever else, and like, or Kosovo or Jamaica or anywhere else. Like, if there's a group of people that wants to be independent and have their own autonomy, then I'm in favor of that. So that's people should have the right to be able to self-identify and to be able to be autonomous in how they govern themselves. So I have no problem with Quebec becoming a nation if that's what the majority of people in Quebec want to do. I mean, like, I honestly I have no strong feelings towards Canada. So if provinces break off of Canada, then okay, that's the way it is. If, if all the provinces end up becoming their own states, okay, well, that's the way it is. I mean, just life would still go on. I don't think it'd be that we would still trade with one another and things like that. So I have no problems with Quebec becoming a nation if that's what they want. Although, I mean, there's not a whole lot I can do as a Lethbridge MP regarding that. Any other questions? No problem, Road Titty. All right. Well, give it another minute or so, and if there are no more questions, then I guess we'll call it a night. But just leave it open for another minute. See if any other questions come up. All right, so we've been broadcasting live, streaming live for an hour and 10 minutes now. So it seems like questions have calm down. So I think I will call it a night. So I appreciate this. I don't think I can do next week. I think I might have something next Saturday. Let me just double check. Oh yes, yeah, I probably have something next Saturday. I haven't had it confirmed yet, so I might not be doing one of these next week. If it falls through, then I will do this again next week. Otherwise, I will do it on the 18th. So I'll either have one or two more of these left before the election. So hopefully I can see y'all then. Top 3 movies. I have no idea. I rarely watch movies more than once, and so there's a lot of movies I've watched that I don't even remember what they were. So I don't really have top movies. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question. Yeah, to me, movies are fun. I was a theater major, and so I graduated with the drama degree. And so acting is something that I like, and so I just like getting engrossed in the production and just getting lost in it and not really analyzing it or anything like that. I know there are movies that I did not like. We watched Pets United last night as a family. Oh my goodness, that was a really badly done movie. And same with that one. What was that movie that Jason Kenney was getting all worked up over? The Bigfoot family. I can't remember what the name of it was. That was a really badly done movie too. So I know when movies are bad. So, but I'm not sure that I have any favorite movies. So, all right. So great. Thanks everybody for showing up. Really appreciate it. Some great questions. Thank you for making me think. Helps me prepare for the debates. Have a good night. Solidarity.